So, as part of this class, I'm going to ask you to watch part of the documentary video series Commanding Heights, which talks about the Asian financial meltdown in the 1990s. And I think in order to really understand that, and also to really understand how currency fits together in terms of the global economy, we need to talk a little bit about what are some of the consequences of economic policy, and then we can talk about how countries ended up getting stuck and burned in the Asian financial crisis. So when we think about currency fluctuations, right, we've talked about as the dollar increases in value or decreases in value relative to other currencies. Some people call this the dollar being strong or weak. I don't like that language because it sort of implies that strong is good and weak is bad, and that's actually not, I think, the appropriate way to think about this. I think it's important to think the dollar is high, or the dollar is expensive, or the dollar is low, or the dollar is inexpensive. That might be a better way to think about it, because there's different economic consequences and there are different winners and losers depending upon what's going on with the dollar and other currencies. So when the dollar is high or the dollar is expensive relative to other currencies, what that means is that when you go to Walmart, right, you can fill up your shopping cart with stuff that's imported because your dollar will buy more stuff in other countries, and so imports look really, really cheap. But if you're an exporter, if you have a factory in the United States and you're trying to sell stuff internationally, that's really hard, right? You go on your international tour and you try and find different markets, and you go in with your 4-color brochures and you show them the stuff you make, and people say, oh, this looks really great, I could really use this. And they look at your prices and they say, wow, that's in dollars, huh? And dollars are really expensive. I can't afford what you're selling because of the price in dollars, right? So a strong dollar is hard for domestic manufacturers, and that then trickles into domestic manufacturers, running fewer shifts or shutting down, and that can increase unemployment. If you're thinking about tourism, right, it's almost the reverse story, right? If the dollar is strong, U.S. tourists, when they go abroad, can wander around and just be thrilled at how cheap everything appears because they're taking their dollars, they're converting them into their local currency, and they're able to buy a lot of that local currency. But foreign tourists, when they come to the United States, they have to take their local currency and buy dollars, and it takes a lot of that local currency, and therefore they're wandering around trying to find ways to save money, right? So they're staying at the Motel 5 because the Motel 6 is just too expensive. When the dollar is inexpensive or weak or cheap, that has all the sort of reverse effects, right? That imports suddenly become really expensive. You go to Walmart, instead of a heaping shopping cart, your shopping carts may be half as full, because while you can buy stuff with dollars, buying stuff from other countries, they're not going to give you as much stuff because they don't want your dollars as much, or it takes more dollars to purchase that stuff from other countries. But exporters find that it's relatively easy to export stuff because the dollar is relatively weak, and this helps domestic manufacturers. And so one of the things that we've seen with currency is that it can be a tool of manipulating trade. And so during the Great Depression, countries are pursuing policies called beggar thy neighbor policies. And the idea was that if you drove the value of your currency down, that would give your manufacturers an advantage, and thus you could export more cheaply and you could gain those jobs at the expense of other countries by keeping your currency artificially cheap or artificially inexpensive by essentially running your printing press. So there's a consequence for trade. There's also a consequence for tourism, right? So when the dollar is low, U.S. tourists going abroad find that everything costs a lot. They try to convert their dollars into, Norwegian kroner, and they don't get very many, and prices are really high, and they have to, really make choices about what they can actually consume because of that exchange rate. But foreign tourists can live like kings, right? Folks from Canada can come down to North Dakota in their stretch Humvee limos and stop at, Kmart and just load everything up because it appears really cheap, because the dollar is weak and they can purchase a lot more than they would be able to otherwise. So there's all these sort of economic consequences. But one economic consequence that we haven't really talked about is how the changes in exchange rates and the changes in interest rates can affect investment. And all this ends up getting tied together because currencies are set in terms of money coming in or money coming out. One of the ways that I think is useful to think about this is with the Impossible Trinity. And if you can understand the Impossible Trinity, you will be able to see how the interest rates and the exchange rates and investment all fit together, and and how these things interact, right? And so the concept of the Impossible Trinity is that there are three things that we might desire in setting up a currency system. We might desire a fixed exchange rate, because a fixed exchange rate means stability, right? It means that the value of our currency is linked to something else, and it's very predictable. I know that if I take my dollars and turn them into pounds, I'll be able to get my pounds and turn them back into dollars at the exact same exchange rate, and it takes all the uncertainty out of those exchanges. So a fixed exchange rate is good. We also might want sovereign monetary policy. Sovereign monetary policy means that we get to control our own interest rates and set interest rates to do that dual mandate, right? Low unemployment, low inflation. And that's the only thing that we have to think about when we set those interest rates. We don't have to set our interest rates to bring in foreign investment. We can just think about what's good for our economy. And then a third thing that we might want in a currency system is free capital flow. We might want to allow for money to come into our economy and leave our economy in terms of investment. And maybe that's good because money moves where it can be most efficient, and that's maybe good for economic growth. The reason why we talk about the Impossible Trinity is that while there are three things we might like, at any given time, you can only have two of them. And if you try to do all three, you're going to run into trouble. So under the Bretton Woods system that was established at the end of World War II, the United States set up a system with fixed exchange rates and sovereign monetary policy, and there were pretty strong restrictions on capital movement. There wasn't a lot of investment of taking dollars from the United States and taking them to invest and build factories in other countries, and money from other countries didn't come into the United States. Capital flows were pretty heavily restricted because of the destabilization they could do to the Impossible Trinity. But in the 1970s, when the United States walked away from the fixed exchange rate system, the US realized that they could adopt free capital flows. And so suddenly the United States withdrew or dismantled a bunch of these capital controls and allowed for foreign investment to come in, and really encouraged US businesses and industries and banks and financial institutions to invest out in the rest of the world. So the US switched from fixed exchange rates and sovereign monetary policy to sovereign monetary policy and free capital flows, and gave up the fixed exchange rate in favor of a floating exchange rate. Well, other countries were trying to adapt to this as well, and as the US moved into a free capital flow model, that money was pouring into other countries that were still trying to do the fixed exchange rate and sovereign monetary policy. And so one of the things that ends up happening is in the 1990s, you get a crisis in Asia where a number of really economically dynamic countries in Thailand and Indonesia and Malaysia and China and South Korea all get hit by this financial crisis. And at the root of a lot of it was essentially trying to do all three of these things at once, trying to hold on to the system that was in place with Bretton Woods and add in free capital flow. Okay, so why is this a problem? So imagine for a second that you are running a central bank in, I'm going to say, Thailand, and your job is to maintain a fixed exchange rate in which you trade Thai bahts, which is the currency in circulation, for US dollars that are taken from your foreign reserves, your pile of cash sitting in the back of the room. And when people come in with Thai baht and want dollars, you hand them dollars and you take their Thai baht. And when people want to trade dollars for bahts, you take the dollars and you give them Thai bahts. And it's all a fixed exchange rate system. Okay, that works fine. And when things are good, money is coming in and your foreign reserves are growing, and you can do this free capital flow thing, and your monetary policy, you can do whatever you want, and the fixed exchange rate is in place, and everybody's happy when times are good. But at some point, something's going to happen. Maybe there's political instability, maybe there's an economic shock, maybe a bank goes under, maybe international investors just freak out, or something happens somewhere else in the world. In the case of Thailand, it was that the United States and Japan adjusted the interest rates to try to spark more economic growth in Japan, and money stopped flowing into Thailand as much and began pulling out. And as the money starts pulling out of Thailand, right, the folks at the central bank have people who are lining up saying, I have some Thai baht, I'd like to trade them for US dollars. And the folks at the central bank are giving out the dollars, and the pile of foreign reserves is going down and down and down as the dollars are leaving the door, as people are trading in their Thai bahts. And at some point, you look behind you and you realize that you're almost out of dollars. And there's a line of people out the door holding Thai baht, wanting to trade those baht in for dollars. That is a currency crisis. That's a currency crisis brought on by trying to do all three of these things at once. And if you're going to get through the rest of the day, one of those three things is going to have to go. So this is your problem. You've got people lining up. They want to trade bahts for dollars. You don't have any dollars on hand. The first thing that you might do is you might call up and ask for help. You might scream to the international community and say, oh my gosh, we are running out of dollars. We're in a currency crisis. Can somebody quickly, rapidly lend us, $100 billion of dollars so we can keep the system going? If nobody's willing to do that, then you have three options. Option one is you can drop the fixed exchange rate. You can say to that line of people, look, you're not going to get dollars from me. If you want dollars, if you want to get rid of your Thai bahts, go and try and sell them on the currency markets, right? See what you can get on the street. And it's not going to be that official exchange rate. It's going to be an exchange rate set in terms of supply and demand. So essentially, you can turn people away and say, figure it out on your own and abandon the fixed exchange rate. Your other option is you can say to the people in that line, tough luck, you can't leave. I know you brought a bunch of money into this country and traded it for Thai baht, and you thought that you could just trade back whenever you want, but you can't. I don't have enough dollars on hand. You can trade $50 or you can get $50 today, but no more. Come back tomorrow and I'll give you another 50. That would be a restriction on capital flow. You can't bring money in and out of an economy at will. It's greatly restricted. That's going to have some real consequences. It'll take care of the line of people at the door. That problem will be solved. But international investors are going to be really hesitant to bring money into your economy because they may not be able to get that money out. And so you may have done long-term economic harm to your economy by restricting free capital flows. So you can give up that second one. If you look at that and say, no, that's not good, and we have to hold the fixed exchange rate, your third option is to give up sovereign monetary policy. Your third option is try to keep people in your country and keep the baht in your country and bring more dollars in. And the way that you do that is by saying, why would you want to leave? Why would you want to take your bahts, turn them into dollars, and leave our economy? Don't you realize what wonderful investment opportunities are here? For example, you can buy Thai government debt and we will pay you 5% interest. That's a better interest rate than you're going to get in the United States. And maybe some people are going to say, oh, well, I didn't realize that was an option. I guess instead of taking my Thai baht, turning them into dollars and leaving, I'll buy Thai government debt. In fact, maybe I'll bring in some more dollars to do that. Maybe you're not going to be able to win people over with 5% interest. Maybe it needs to be 7 or 10 or 15 or 20% interest. And all of a sudden you are paying credit card level interest rates on government debt, not because it's controlling inflation, not because it's good for your economy. It's not good for your economy. That will crush private sector activity. That will make it impossible for people to buy homes or get business loans or do any of that lending that normally happens in an economy. You've set those interest rates because you're trying to lure in foreign cash to help fill up your foreign reserves so that you can hold onto that fixed exchange rate. When that happens, where your foreign reserves are going down and you've got a line of people at the door, you are in an economic crisis and something very bad is going to happen. But these are your three choices. And as we'll see in that Commanding Heights video, different countries made different choices. In the case of Thailand, they abandoned the fixed exchange rate. Other countries were told, no, just jack up your interest rates, hold on to, abandon sovereign monetary policy, you can get through this. And others like Malaysia said, well, this is ridiculous. We're just going to restrict free capital flow because these other things are going to do very serious, immediate harm to our economy and to our people.